You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for a successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this week's episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast. And if there is one area of dental practice management that changes all the time, we always find confusing and we always have our fingers crossed that we're doing everything correctly, it's human resources and all of the compliance around that. But today I have got two members of the Proven Group joining me today. They've got some magnificent ways of helping dental practices in this area. And unless you've got someone specialised in all the information, I think we do always worry that we're doing the right thing. So first of all, we have got Carme. She is the director, and as the second guest, Belinda, mentions, she's the flashy front end of the Proven Group. How are you, Carme?
Very well, thanks, Julie. Thank you so much for having us on here today. How are you?
I'm very well, and I'm impressed with your flashiness. You do look flashy. I've met you a couple of times before, and you've always seemed flashy to me.
Thanks.
So Belinda knows what she's talking about, but nobody out there can see you, so that's a shame. They're going to have to go to your website to find out how flashy you are.
They will. Absolutely.
And Belinda's also joining us, and she is a senior human resources strategist with the Proven Group. Welcome, Belinda.
Hello, great to be here.
Well, thanks both of you for joining me for this conversation. Do you find this working with businesses that they say, oh, thank God you guys are around to give us some direction?
Usually they do that. Yeah. It's like, oh, where were you 2 years ago? Why couldn't you have come into our... But, we turn up when we're most in need.
And I've got some points here of what the Proven Group, what they can actually provide and how you actually help businesses. Is it just small businesses that you work with? Tell me, first of all, what type of businesses have you been working with? As you know, the listeners out there for this podcast are all in dental practices.
So we do work with small to medium-sized businesses. We work with sole traders, but in particular we also work with as well multi-site businesses, franchisees, and yes, we do have clients in the dental industry as well. So we help all different, and manufacturing, lots of different businesses.
Magnificent. We love people who are specialised in the dental space as well, I have to say.
Of course.
So some of the things that you help people with is people management, team performance, compliance in terms of fair work, work safe, work cover, legislative acts out there that we need to be aware of. Crikey, there's so much, isn't there, to be thinking about?
There is, and pay attention because it changes quite often.
Yeah, and this is the bit that I go, oh my God, give us a chance. And it feels like every single time you hire someone new or redo someone's contract, you're doing all the same research all over again just to make sure you are compliant.
Well, that's right. And because we work in the space and we're looking at it on a day-to-day basis, we are up to date. And it's not the kind of thing that most small businesses are really, savvy with, because they're really good at what they do. Your dental practices are really good at dentistry. Thank God, because I need good dentists. But we need people who are specialists in this sort of human resources area as well. And at the very least, we can actually navigate the Fair Work website, which a lot of people can't. You virtually need a degree to do that anyway.
Yeah,
you do. And I don't know if it impacted on your business much, but I've got a feeling it possibly did, because during the COVID situation, I've never had more questions posed to me by bookkeepers and dental practice owners and practice managers of what are our rights, what are their rights, how do we navigate through this space? How have you guys managed the COVID space? How has it impacted on the Proven Group?
Well, I feel bad saying it, but it's been actually good for us. So there's certainly been a lot of queries around what to do, with COVID, and right at the very beginning it was about, can you stand people down? Do you need to do that? Can they work from home? Like all of those sorts of questions came up. And a lot of it was space that was unknown at the time. The word unprecedented got bandied around a lot. And, although it was overused, it was still true. We just didn't know where we were at, and we would phone Fair Work as we do on a regular basis. We talk to them all the time. And they weren't telling you what to do, really, because they just didn't know, apart from there was one clause in the Fair Work Act that allowed to stand down employees. But what we found really interesting was we had a group of clients that were really badly affected straight away. So travel agents, tourism sort of places, hospitality, those kinds of things. But then we had a totally another group of clients that just, soared. They just got bigger and bigger. Pharmacies were a big one in that area. A lot of the medical sort of side of things increased is what we've seen. So there's been a lot of growth out there at the same time, and they're the sort of two ends of the spectrum of businesses that we tend to work with, because when they're in the middle and there's no issue or pain point, they don't need to ring us. They ring us when they're growing or when they're shrinking.
And that's why as well, if I can also add to that, is that we've always provided a phone service for our clients, but our number one demand and service now is definitely our phone a friend. Whereby, especially during COVID and through what Belinda was just speaking about then, is when clients can pick up the phone, ask any question, any HR-related question, and without having to try and navigate the Fair Work website or figure it out themselves. And even importantly, if they do figure it out, have they really, are they compliant? So that's probably where we've really expanded there as well.
I can really see how the phone a friend would work beautifully, because this is what we were finding, that there was so much information out there. We were taking baby steps all the way through. Don't tell me everything I need to know, because it's too overwhelming. It's too much to absorb and try to implement. But with the phone a friend, then when there's always that one key burning question that's relevant right now, and to be able to provide that service, that we can answer that one for you, and then when you get the next one come up, we can answer that one for you as well. I can see why that was an enormously successful strategy in helping your clients.
Definitely. And being not a call centre as well, they will always speak with a person and it'll be the same person, and we normally match our HR strategist to the background and the industry. So therefore when the person rings, we're already familiar with their industry, their background, so then we chat to them and then be able to address their initial problem more promptly.
Fantastic. You also help people in terms of recruitment as well. Tell us more about that.
Recruitment is a tough gig.
It is.
Isn't it?
It is really tough.
It
is.
And
in dental at the moment, you must already be aware, in dental at the moment, the pool of people who are working in the dental industry and have that dental experience is getting smaller. And I'm getting more and more calls all the time, can you help us try to find somebody? But now with the COVID situation, a couple of things have happened. One, that either employers or employees became disgruntled with each other and their management of this strange space. Mm-hmm. Another thing as well, sometimes the people don't want to be vaccinated, so they're leaving the industry. I've also heard or read on one of the Facebook forums that the industry has lost a lot of dental assistants because they're now doing COVID testing at testing stations. So what have you found in terms of your management with dental and the recruitment side of things? Have you had complaints that it's becoming more and more difficult all the time?
Absolutely. It's always difficult to find professionals. So just from a dentist perspective, it's always difficult to find, them, and then to find one that's going to be a good fit for your practice. But even your dental assistants are becoming harder and harder to find. With the dentists have been impacted also by the lack of immigration that we've had in the couple of years that we've had COVID. We're now starting to see those borders open up again a little bit, which should, in the next few months start to see, some skilled people coming through. But then again, are they all just going to go to the major cities? Are we going to see any in the regions? That's the other sort of question that brings. But the dental assistants as well, a lot of people have done one of two things during COVID. They've either sat on the role that they've had, because at least then I've got personal leave and annual leave all there, and if something happens I'll be okay, or they've just left the industry altogether. So we're just finding it hard to fill any role really at the moment, and there's all of this talk in the media at the moment about the great resignation they're calling it, where everyone's, I don't know what they're going to do to eat, if they're not working, but anyway, that's another story.
That's right. One kind of goes hand in hand with the other, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. It's one thing to resign, but surely you're going to take another job somewhere else. But the problem is oftentimes that job somewhere else is outside the industry, and that doesn't help from who have we got coming through? Luckily, the government with the traineeships that they're offering, there's at least something there for business to try and grow your own, I suppose, which is better than nothing, but not probably ideal for most practices situations.
And with the traineeships as well, I suppose offering the grants as well that do come with it is helpful. And as Belinda said, they're just, people aren't leaving their jobs, they're just staying put for this side of Christmas. Yes, it'll be interesting what does happen with the Great Resignation after Christmas. But once somebody does, I'm finding a lot more as well that I'm hearing is that once somebody does decide that they want to leave, then their existing employer comes back and counteracts the offer, and then they stay. So
there's going to be some bidding wars on.
Yeah, there are bidding wars. That's right. Yeah.
And that's what happens when demand increases and supply decreases. That's just standard economy, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, it is, and you can't blame an employee for using that to their advantage. But at the same time, as a business owner, you've got to really juggle that. Can I afford to pay that extra for this to keep this person and therefore be able to meet the customer demand? Or is it just unsustainable?
Yeah. And throughout your recruitment services, you also help practices with personality profiling through DISC. Is that true?
Yes, we do.
Carmel's favourite topic.
Oh, you love the DISC, do you, Carmel?
I do. I love the DISC, because what Belinda will often say with recruitment, she'll always say it's a tough gig, and yes, it is. And that with interviewing, it's a one-act play, and we have to break through that facade, whereby like when you're attending an interview, you get dressed up, you rehearse your lines, you're there to win the job, so that's what people will do. However, you have their resume, you have their cover letter, you can see all their skills, experience and what they've done. However, it doesn't unravel what then the next layer, what's beneath. So therefore, are they the right fit? And with the DISC that we use, the reason that I love it is, apart from the fact it's just a fascinating tool, but I love it because it's an Australian model, and so there's no American jargon in there. And I love it because it's based on behaviour, not somebody's personality. So as we all know, we all adjust our behaviour depending on the environment that we're in. So to be able to complete a DISC profile, the top 1-2 candidates, then you can then uncover what their natural working behaviour is in that environment. But then in addition to that, ideally what we do like to do initially is profile the job as well. It's a revolutionary idea, isn't it, Belinda?
Yes.
Profile the job. What does the job require? So just not necessarily the candidate. And then when you've profiled the job, you have a graph. And then when you profile the candidate, you have another graph, and then you can compare.
Oh, I love that. I just love that, because this is the thing. Everything else has become 360, leadership, feedback, all the rest of it. But so why not have it come into play in terms of recruitment as well? Because just as practices out there are trying to find the most ideal candidate for the job, the candidates are looking for the most ideal practice to work in.
And it is a mutual need relationship. But why can't that mean that it's win-win?
And that's what we should all be striving for, win-win. I mean, we hopefully, fingers crossed, when you do hire somebody or when you do start to go working for a new boss or a new company, that is a long-term relationship. Not many people go, oh, fantastic, I'll be here for a good 6 months and then I'll get anxious and I'll jump off and do something else for another 6 months. Most of the time, we do want that stability when it comes to our work. And I think with COVID as well, that's helped us understand how, that permanent, stable job is of great benefit for us. But to be able to match it in such a way that you can go in far more confidently to that relationship, it really does help give a bit of a foundation where people can create an environment for you to deliver a great performance from both sides.
Yeah, they're great tools, and unfortunately they're underutilised normally because people don't know about them. And it's quite often we get calls there for recruitment, it all needs to be done yesterday. But because it's such a process, and if it's a process done properly, then you get a much better result.
Yeah, and I like that it talks about or assesses the actual behaviour of people as well, because I learned about DISC and Myers-Briggs, and I've gone through and done a couple of them, and you are left with the thought that, but put this same person in a completely different environment and they may have different strengths come to the fore and different weaknesses be revealed. But talk more a bit about the behavioural side of it that's being assessed. What can you nut that down a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So behaviours are made up of two aspects. So the personality of the person, which the psychologists tell us is more or less set by the time we're in our late teens. So, barring some sort of brain injury that changes your personality, it's not really going to change over the rest of the course of your life. And the environment that you're in. So as Carmel said, the workplace is an environment. So when we get people to fill out their DISC profile, we ask them to think about themselves at work, not how they'd like to be at work or how they think they should be at work, but how they actually are at work. And the benefit there for anyone who's got to manage people, of course, is that you can manage a behaviour. You can't manage a personality. It is what it is at the end of the day. But the personality, the behaviour itself is something that we can look at and modify and change things in the environment to help the person perform better in the role.
And as they do quite often say, is that, hire for skills and fire for behaviour.
It's good to know that beforehand, the behaviour bit, before you have to fire them.
And that's the key, isn't it? How much information can we gather about each other, business and candidate, so we can create as smooth a transition into a relationship as possible and not have to go through the absolute pain and trauma of either having to quit or fire somebody.
Nobody enjoys that. That's the thing. Any employer who's ever had to put somebody off for whatever reason, and if it's a performance or a behavioural thing, it's even harder. They always say to me, I'm traumatised by it, and they are. Because it's a horrible thing to have to do. It's horrible for the employee, obviously, and, hopefully if they had some sort of support mechanism in place, like an employee assistance program or something like that, where they could offer that to people, or an outplacement process whereby, you could help the person have their resume and all of that kind of thing redone. There's that aspect that can soften the blow, particularly if it's a downsizing of the business. It's not really the person's fault that they're being put off, but it's circumstance, which has been a COVID thing as well. Then, they can be really helpful. But the DISC profile, the idea is that you might get to know some of those foibles before the person starts, and therefore not try and change the person, because you really can't do that. But so instead of trying to, ram a square peg into a round hole, we might try and change the hole.
I love that. And I was speaking to somebody else, a couple of other ladies, on one of the podcast recordings that's going to be coming out soon, and we were talking about, they say that you've got to get the right people on the bus, but that bus is the environment, and you've got to make sure if you have got a bad bus, it's not pretty, doesn't run very well, it's got lots of issues, and you get these ideal people coming on the bus, putting them in the ideal seat so everyone's in the right spot, but the environment's no good, those people are going to get off that bus at the very next opportunity. And so in essence, quite often you, as a dental consultant, I hear I have to get the right team first in order to build the right practice. But I think it's the other way around. You have to create the right environment first for those great people to come in and say, yes, I fit here, I can make a difference here.
Yeah, and what you're really talking about there, I think, is that employer of choice thing. So a lot of our clients have come to us in the past and said, we want to be an employer of choice. And I say, that's fantastic. What are you doing to do that? So, we actually can't deliver that for you, but we can help you put the processes and the foundations in place that over time will build, because being an employer of choice is a result. It's not a process, So it's all of those things like as you're saying, if the bus has got engine failure and black smoke coming out the back and all that kind of thing. Well, from a HR perspective, have you got your contracts and your PDs and all of your performance review processes and all of the Fair Work stuff in place? Do you understand the award? All of that stuff that has to be there from that legislative perspective. The compliancy things, or what we call the nuts and bolts HR stuff, is absolutely necessary because it's your foundation, but it's not what turns people on. It's not why people stay with your practice. You know, they're wanting to stay with leaders who inspire and who win the hearts and minds. So the foundation's very important because you've got to have a bus that runs well, and then to keep the good people on the bus moving forward, you've got to provide a vision and a method to go there, and why somebody would really want to be a part of that.
All of a sudden I'm picturing the Partridge Family bus. That was certainly a different kind of bus.
Oh yeah, music included.
Yeah, very colourful, isn't it?
Yeah, very colourful, that's exactly right. And so team performance and people management, that's one of the things that you do offer to clients. And so what sort of challenges can they bring to you that you can help them with in terms of helping them with individual team members and their performance?
Wow, there's a question we get a lot, isn't it?
What can you do for me?
What can we do for you? And look, quite a lot is the answer to that. So the other thing to probably just point out is I've had more years in HR than I care to remember, so I won't say exactly how many decades that is, but chances are I've heard your story before, which is good. It's a good thing. It means that I've figured out how to handle that particular thing. And generally speaking, if there's a performance issue with somebody, and this comes out of the leadership training that we run as well, when there's a performance issue with somebody, the reason it's there is because of one of four things. There's no role clarity, so have you been clear with the person about what their role is and where their boundaries are? And the sure sign of that is if there's any confusion at all, then there's no role clarity. Does the person have the ability to do the role? And my example I always use there is if you asked me to build a bridge across a river, I would not be able to do that because I have no ability to do that. I don't have any engineering knowledge. I can't use a hammer. It's just not going to happen. I lack the ability to do that. But you can address ability issues with training, with the appropriate training. And the third one is the environment. So that includes the physical environment, but also things like, do people have enough resources? Do they have the right software? Do they have enough time? All of those kind of things come into the environment. And all of those three things, role clarity, ability and environment, are all things that the manager of the practice can actually change or influence. And by influencing those things, you can help the person to increase their performance. The fourth factor around performance is motivation. And regardless of what people tell you, you cannot motivate another person. That's a fallacy. Motivation is internal. What you can do is remove the things that demotivate them in those other three factors. And then if you've been through a whole process where you've tried to lift the person through those other three factors and you still have a performance issue, that is when I would start talking about a disciplinary process and possibly moving the person on to, fulfill their potential elsewhere.
I love it. Fulfill their potential elsewhere. What I can see happening, because I had my own practice for 10 years and I think I was in this basket a little bit as well. I think it's a common thing, you must come across it all the time, where the pool is small and so whoever's looking the best of the bad bunch, you grab onto them and then you overpromise what environment you can create for them, and they're over-promising quite often what their ability and skill set is, and everyone just crosses their fingers and don't put in an actual plan to make sure things are going to work. Can you help practices develop some sort of onboarding process that even if it's not an ideal match, you are still creating the most effective way possible moving forward?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And it's quite often you find that, if you've got a skill shortage, the technical skill is in shortage, then you need to take what's available. Which may often mean it's not an ideal fit for your team, but you need the skill, at the bottom. That's the bottom line to keep the business running. So knowing that, that you're going to end up with issues once that person starts. So one of the things, again, that we focus on with clients is instead of having a performance management plan after there's an issue, let's have a performance planning process before there's an issue, because, prevention is better than cure. None of this is kind of new stuff. It's just applying it in the HR space. And you can do that from day one with your person, and you can do that through your DISC profile with your job profile match. So say you've only had a 52% match for the role, but they still had the right, they were still the best of the bad bunch, and you absolutely had to have somebody. You know, that's arguable. I would say wait for a better person, but say that for whatever reason you've decided to go with this person. There's nothing stopping you from having a proactive conversation with that person before there's an issue and saying, hey, here's your DISC profile, here's your feedback, or we could come and give them that feedback. And then because of this, we're seeing that a potential area that might be a problem for you, and maybe this has been in the past, might be, you know, detail or following up on the paperwork or something. You know, what is it that they're not going to do? So what have you tried in the past that's helped you with that? So getting them involved in the solution as well is really important. What can we do to help you to succeed in this role? You know, so the person when they start feels really supported, even though they know they're not a great match, but they need the job and you need the person. So it's, again, mutual need. So let's set it up so that the person can succeed. And feedback then becomes a massive part of that process. You know, so providing feedback to that person that's specific, that's timely, you know, that they're not sort of sitting out there going, I have no idea if I'm going okay. I wonder if I'm going to get through the probationary period. I don't know. Communication, you can't over-communicate. Doesn't matter if anyone's told you that, they've lied. You cannot over-communicate to people.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think you can over-communicate either. And when I had my practice, I went from being a dental receptionist and everything into that more leadership role. So it was quite a big shift for me. And I started going through that resistance of, gosh, I have to speak to people so much, you know, about the vision and the this and the standard operating procedures and do this and do that. And I have to, because I wanted them to understand the whys behind everything. So I felt like I was explaining everything over and over again, because we don't always hear properly or absorb the information is important when, you know, we hear it for the first time. So I knew that. But the day I embraced that my conversations with my team members was the most important thing I could be doing, all of a sudden it became a lot easier. All the resistance left, and I started to see the impact of having that level of communication with people. Because what can happen when it's not an ideal matching, even when it is an ideal matching, but you both sides are scrutinising the performance of each other, and so you can sometimes be looking with shaded glasses at what the other is doing, is that the level of confidence that the new employee has can start to diminish. And I think that's one of the worst things that can possibly happen. Someone with very low self-confidence has a low performance, doesn't believe they can get on top of things, feels incompetent, and nothing seems to turn that around in any great hurry.
And confidence is one of these things that's really tricky, you know, so it's tied in with self-esteem, and so are things like a short fuse or aggressive behaviour is tied in with low self-esteem. So people, if they're feeling that way, if their confidence has dropped, you know, maybe they've gone passive, maybe they've gone submissive. And that's not necessarily ideal either, because then you're not getting the most out of that person. They're becoming a yes person rather than a valued member of the team that has a differing opinion that could, you know, give you a great continuous improvement. So confidence is a massive thing. So there's the how you do things from a management perspective. You've touched on the why you do things from a management perspective, but it's also the tone of voice and the body language and all of that other stuff, and how you're delivering that message, because saying the same sentence to somebody in two different ways has a totally different meaning. I don't know if you've noticed this, but human beings are pretty complicated things, and they bring all of this baggage with them to work called life, you know, and other things that are happening in their world, so we've got to deal with all of that stuff, like all of their life stuff that is happening, not just the fact that you haven't answered the phone quickly enough, or you've left this client waiting too long, or you've misdiagnosed someone. Hopefully it doesn't work, but you know, whatever.
Done it again.
Well, I'm always saying I hope my dentist is a high C on the DISC profile, because I'd like them to be compliant, detail orientated and accurate.
I love it. So you said earlier continuous improvement, and one of the philosophies that I really encourage dental teams to adopt as part of their culture is constant, never-ending improvement. Because I think if everyone, including the owners, the leaders, the managers of the organisation, if we are all on that lovely journey of continuous improvement together, that means feedback is part of it, and we can reframe what feedback means to us. Means mistakes will be made, and that's groovy. That's part of learning. It means that we are going to feel incompetent at times, but with proper support and a good environment around us, we're going to be supported all the way through that and just start to feel that strong sense of progress and development. And so if you're not getting the exactly right fit there in terms of ability, as you say, you can be taught how to build the bridge. I just don't know how to do it right now. But put a proper plan in place to make sure that does happen. Now, another element that you help practices or help businesses in is training. Is that training of managers or the whole team?
We like to see everyone, don't we, Carme?
We do. We like to see everybody.
We all need to learn.
So a bit of both, actually. I was speaking with a new client today, actually, and she was saying, my managers don't have a basic understanding of HR. Is there something below basic? So I thought that was funny. We do a lot in the leadership and management space because, as I said before, it's so important from an engagement perspective. If you can engage people, you can get that discretionary effort and they can put in that extra effort that doesn't cost you any more and can really add a lot more value to your bottom line in the business. That's cultural based. So whether or not people want to put that extra effort in is based on the culture in the business, which is impacted by the behaviours of the leadership group mainly. So are those behaviours in line with your values? Are they in line with your vision? Are they in line with your purpose? Because the purpose of the practice is not to make money. That's a result. It's always a result. The purpose has to be a higher reason for being, I suppose. I do a lot of work with a local pharmacy and have done for over a decade, and his purpose is all about being a community health hub, because it's about being that one-stop shop for customers to come in and ask anything about their health, because obviously they'll refer them on if they need to go to another health practitioner. So why do you exist, I suppose, comes back to it. And from a training perspective, understanding what leadership is, understanding what management is, and that they're different from each other, and that they're both important in order to get things done in a business. And that, as you were just saying, Julie, realising that you've actually got to spend a bit of time on that stuff. It doesn't happen if you're spending 100% of your time in the technical ability space, you are spending no time on leadership and management. So the team can't make that up on their own. And as soon as you put in a little bit of time, it doesn't have to be a massive amount, but a small amount consistently, you see this massive lift in the team straight away. So from a training perspective, we love to do all of that stuff around the leadership and management stuff. We do a lot of team building with everyone in the team, particularly using the DISC model, because that's so much fun, isn't it, Carme?
That's the best one. That's what I was going to mention as well. In addition to the leadership and management, yes, is the DISC training, the DISC in teams. And the simple way I always like to explain that and why I enjoy it so much is because, well, with DISC, for those that don't know, of course you've got D being quite the dominant behaviour, I is the influential, the real chatterbox bubbly ones. You always know when they're around. You can always hear them. The S is like the steadiness, and C is the compliance, as Belinda touched on before. You certainly want your dentist to be high C and attention to detail. But when we do DISC in teams, for example, you could be, in the tea room and you might have Bob and Betty, and Betty might think, I don't really like sitting in there with Bob because he always seems grumpy, or whatever it may be. But when you do DISC in teams, each team member will go away, complete their DISC profile, you bring them all back in, you put all the D's, I's and S's and C's, and of course you let the D's go first. The D's should always go first. And once the D has then explained how they like to be communicated with and how they like to be managed, together with the I's, S's and C's, Then it's the moments. It's the moment where, Betty thinks, right, Bob's not grumpy, he's just very direct. I annoy him with my really long emails and ask him how his weekend was because he doesn't want me to ask him. He wants dot point emails. So once everybody understands how to communicate and manage each other, then that's when it's just a lot more, it improves the culture, and then it's a lot more harmonious. That's why I love it.
Yeah, because we do go through life as young people, sometimes into adulthood, thinking everyone's just like me.
Like we all have the traits, the 4 traits in us as well. Some are high and some are low, and that's what a good team requires as well. Like if you had, for example, a team of all the I's, they'll just sit around and just talk all day. And then, so yeah, you do need a balance of all of them. So you've got some direction, then you've got support, then chatty ones, and then the C's coming in from behind, picking up all the attention to detail and making sure everything's compliant.
Well, it's just like your classic football team analogy, isn't it? You can't have a whole football team of rovers, for people who know AFL down here in Melbourne. You can't have a whole team of goal kickers. For soccer, a whole team of goalkeepers. No, everyone... Each role, each seat in that bus, each role within your organisation requires a certain series of specialised skills. And you do need that diversity to be able to fill out all of those roles effectively. Well, HR certainly is something that most dental practices try to do on their own. And it's always a headache as well. I don't think there's any dental practice out there where the owners and the bookkeepers and the practice manager out there going, you beauty, another HR issue. I can't wait to get my teeth into this one.
They don't say that.
So I have really enjoyed our conversation today. At the very least, just to let dental practices out there know that you exist, that there is help out there, and it's as easy as a phone call away. The phone a friend really triggers within me as something that's enormously helpful as a service.
It is, and it is because when issues arise, they're not planned, no one is excited about them, and then and there's panic. Who do I call? What do I do? Then they jump on Google, have a read, have a search, and then before you know it, you might not even be staying on an Australian site. Who knows where people, they go off on their own tangent. As I mentioned before, even when they think they find the answers, are they correct? Are they compliant? And while all this is going on, I just wonder who actually stops for a moment to think, wow, what actually could I have been doing better in my business right now? I could have actually been, providing a better customer service, or I could have been being an expert in what you do. So, but it's all about picking up the phone and knowing who to call. And that is why it is our number one demand. And I'm very passionate about our phone a friend, is because the team actually do specialise in the area. And even, for example, we have registration of interest forms. It doesn't lock anybody into anything. All it does is for somebody, if they think maybe one day, I might actually one day call a HR specialist because I might actually have a problem. At least if you've got all the details on file, somebody's name, what they do, etc. So when, for example, I always use Betty, so if there's any Betty listeners out there. So whenever, for example, Betty actually calls, we can look up on the CRM, we can see we've got Betty's details. Oh, Betty, yes, we can see that you've got your dental practice down the corner, etc. How can we help? So straight away we're into it to be able to actually answer and address any problems without, oh, sorry, what was your name? And sorry, where were you from? And oh, sorry, I don't really know you. So it's just being efficient and being able to provide advice and the correct answers without being a call centre. That's the biggest thing as well. And just getting the right answer so you can get on with what you actually do best. And it just makes us very, very happy to be able to do that.
I love it.
And the right answer is a really important part of it, because for so many small businesses, they don't actually understand, or they may know, but they don't understand what it means to be a small business in Fair Work's definition, which is less than 15 employee headcount. So what does that mean? There are different rules for a smaller practice. You don't have to be as arduous, say with a disciplinary process. You can do a single written warning and a reasonable time to improve. And that's all you need to do before termination. So a lot of people don't understand those sort of differences. So as Carme was saying, if you register your interest, we can already have that information on file, so we know where you're at. and we can provide that assistance accordingly to what you actually need.
That's a really good point. So it's just not people's specialty. So you're not going to naturally know if there's any subtle changes in the law. Sometimes it can really change the relationship that you have with your employee or employer as well. So if there are practices out there that think, oh goodness me, these people could help me,
pick up the phone and phone a friend is what they need to do.
I love it. All of your details and contact, website, everything is going to be inside the show notes. And so if there are practices out there that do want a little bit of advice, even just have a conversation around how the Proving Group can be incorporated in how your relationships are managed within your employment world, in your practice, then do jump on to those links. Are there any parting words that you'd like to give us?
Well, as Carmel said before, we hire for skills and we fire for behaviours. Behaviours are always the thing that managers struggle with. They can, if the performance issue is around technical ability, they're much better at handling that because there's training or there's something that they can put into place. But when there's a behavioural issue, so-and-so doesn't say good morning, so-and-so doesn't get along with the other one, they're really good at what they do, but, you hear that but. And then it's a behavioural issue. That's what people struggle with, and that's what we can help with too. So obviously we can help with all of that foundation stuff, as I was saying, from the award, interpretation and contracts and all of that gear. And from just that phone a friend perspective, what classification is this person under the award? Have I even got them on the right one? There's a new piece of legislation out in Victoria back on the 1st of July about underpaying people. So a lot of it's a whole new act, so small businesses are just unaware of this stuff and what they could potentially be risking. So just a phone call and a conversation can work that out for you, pretty simply and pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Definitely.
Did you want to add anything, Carmel, before
Well, I was just going to say, as our tagline in our business name does suggest, it is great people, better results. And the ability that we can actually provide peace of mind, that in a nutshell is what we do through the phone a friend. And do you need the direct email address, Julie, or are you going to?
Yeah, call it. I'll still pop it in the show notes, but it's definitely call it out.
If anybody needs to contact us, definitely phone a friend, 1300 312 502, or email us at hr@theprovingroup.com.au.
Beautiful. Well, thank you both so very much. It's been an entertaining and insightful conversation. Hopefully I can get you back on at some point. We can start to go deeper into things like, shifting behaviours, unhelpful behaviours within team members or something like that. Would you be willing to come back on?
Yes, definitely. Great. Yes, thank you so much. For your time as well today, Julie, and having us here to spread the good cheer about HR.
Good cheer about HR. I love it. Oh, goodness me. We're leading up to Christmas time. It's feeling festive. I've got to say, Belinda, I do like the Christmas tree brooch. I have noticed it.
I am a Christmas tragic, really.
I hope you've got your tree up.
I do, yes. It went up last week and everything's the go. Just as a final word, the other quote that we use a lot of, Julie, is if you think compliance is expensive, try non-compliance.
Oh, gosh, this made my heart hurt. Well, that is a very good thing to sign off on. So I do encourage practices out there to contact the Proving Group and have a great Christmas in the meantime. Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, you should join the club. The club members receive an online lunch and learn every week where I share insights, systems and strategies to improve the success of your practice. These lunch and learns could not be easier. They are recording so you can watch them at a time that suits you. Members also have full access to the library of all of our past topics. There's a powerful and effective way to upskill your team. I hope to see you there.